thank you all for being here. The subject that I am invited to speak about is usually promoted as a difficult or complicated issue. When you're looking at us in Palestine in the most recent times, I'm talking about the past 427 days, you see a reality that's pretty unbelievable. So it's very difficult for people to believe it because it's unbelievable. I am not going to speak much about the ongoing genocide because the ongoing genocide is a natural outcome of what has been happening to Palestine throughout the 20th century and the beginnings of the 21st century. In the course of education that I do, I try to help people understand the reality in Palestine through an initiative called To Be There, because to understand what's happening to us, what we're subject to, what we're forced to survive day in, day out, you really have to be there, present, physically, mentally, rationally, and emotionally. So what I'll try to do is to bring Palestine to this room and just show you how, if you are confused about it, that's intentional. If you think it's complicated, it is intentional. I try to remind people all the time that it doesn't matter how you look at Palestine. It doesn't matter how much you read about Palestine, because we have tons of documents and we have tons of literature that's produced by politicians, by academics, by historians, by defenders, supporters, and beneficiaries of Israeli criminal behavior that cover knowledge in a way, but you still don't understand what's happening. When you look at Palestine, how many of you believe that Israel and Palestine are two separate geographies? There is no wrong answers here. I faced a lot of answers during the course of my work, and I believe there is no stupid question. There's no, stupid request in a way. There are a lot of confusions that need to be clarified somehow. When you believe that Israel and Palestine are two separate geographies, then any piece of information you put upon that belief would be confusing by default. Israel and Palestine are not two separate geographies. Israel and Palestine are two different names referring to the exact same geography. That's not very special to us. The country to the west of here is a country that is called Germany or Deutschland. Two different words referring to the exact same geography. When you say that you've been to Israel and you went to Palestine, it sounds exactly like you being to Germany and going to Deutschland. It makes sense to a fool. It makes sense to somebody who doesn't know, but it really doesn't make any sense to the people who live in that region we call Germany. The map behind me is a map that was taken off the website of the Israeli Ministry of Agriculture showing, agriculture in Israel. You take this map to the Israeli ambassador here in Poland, he will tell you this is the map of Israel. You take the same map to the Palestinian ambassador, he will tell you this is the map of Palestine. We are conditioned to believe that Israel and Palestine are two separate geographies, which means we are conditioned to confusion and complication and not understanding. What's happening with this land? How big is this land? This land is about 27,009 square kilometers. Every inch of it is controlled by the Israeli government, with every soul and every life remaining on that land. Narrative based on belief sounds like this. 6,000 years ago, God created heaven and then created Adam and Eve. Eve gave Adam the fruit, and somehow God gave this piece of land to the Jewish people. Now it's based on a belief. Can you prove it? No. Can you disprove it? No. Like, how many of us in this room believe in God? Can you prove it? No. Can you disprove it? No, because it's based on a belief. What you can do is debate it and enjoy a verbal conversation with people you like or people you hate. But belief is always debatable, and you can never prove it or disprove it. The other narrative is based on fact, and as a sociologist, I take phenomena and I keep digging and digging and digging in order to understand, a human evolution, not only in Palestine, but anywhere I study. I need facts, I need norms, I need to analyze what is happening. I grew up in a town called Bethlehem. I was born back in 1980. I was born to a Muslim family. I grew up in a Catholic school. And the soldier between my family's house and my school defined himself as a Jewish person. So I grew up very confused. I kept that confusion with me. I was not in a hurry to come to a conclusion. Why? Because I'm still learning, and I'll continue to learn until the last day of my life. We learned that from our indigenous culture, which tells us to seek knowledge from birth to death. So, the narrative that is based on historic fact, you can look it up, it's all documented. It sounds like this. Back in 1897, 200 or 202 Jewish nationalists met in a town called Basel in Switzerland, and over a period of 2 days, they were discussing how to turn Palestine into a Jewish homeland. Everything that has been happening on the land of Palestine since then is about the creation and maintenance of a Jewish-only state on the land of Palestine. Everything. It's impossible to start understanding a human evolution in Palestine without actually going to that milestone. So, does that sound weird now? Of course it sounds weird. But did that sound weird or criminal back in 1897? No. It was a political and social and economic norm in Europe to have a bunch of people leaving Europe, go somewhere else, and create a replica of Europe in other people's indigenous land. It was not viewed as a criminal behavior. It was not viewed as racist or wrong thing. So those people did not feel or see themselves doing anything wrong. What is happening in Palestine, once again, is not that special or that exceptional. We in this room, if we wanted to have a plan to establish a state for us somewhere else in Africa, what do we have to do? In America, where people speak European languages, in Australia, where people speak European languages, in New Zealand, in Brazil, throughout Latin America, what do? We go through a process that has three main elements. One element has to do with the indigenous population that lives there. Second has to do with the land, because we are after resources. And the third thing is manpower. How are we going to recruit manpower to help us implementing this project? And how did people deal with the first thing, the people? You want to establish Jewish homeland in Palestine, you go to Palestine. You see a very beautiful, diverse society of nearly 1 million people, diverse in religion, skin color, language, and so on. And regardless of their diversity, you view them as an obstacle, because the mindset you are bringing to the place viewed indigenous people as obstacles. How were indigenous people around the world treated? They were treated in one of three ways. First way, elimination, genocide. Like 97% of the population of North America, 95% of the population of Brazil, and nearly 96% of the Aborigines of Australia, 80% of the Maoris. On New Zealand, they were all butchered. So the first common way is genocide. The second common way is that you view indigenous population as human resources. So what do? When you view a person as a human resource, you set them up for exploitation, like the British did in India, or the Dutch and English did in the south of Africa. You exploit the indigenous population and use them to extract resources. The third way is a little bit different, not as common, which is about forcible displacement. You remove people. I understand, ever since I came to Poland like 2-3 weeks ago, I understand there's a lot of forced population transfer that was carried out by different savages of this land. The most savage form I learned about is in the northern frontier of India, when 1 million people were murdered to push Muslims north and to push Hindus south. In Palestine, the way to fix the demographic problem that Palestinians represented to that mindset was through displacement. Since the year 1919, when the British adopted the plan of creating a Jewish-only state in Palestine, not 1 month passed without witnessing the forced displacement of a Palestinian individual, a Palestinian family, a Palestinian village, a Palestinian town, or a Palestinian city. Not 1 month. Under British rule, nearly 125,000 Palestinians were forcibly displaced from 62 communities. Color the pictures of Jaffa back in 1947 and 48 and 49. It will feel like you are looking at pictures taken from Gaza yesterday. Why is that? Same mentality, same tools, same objectives. But not 1 month passed since 1919 without witnessing the displacement of Palestinians. Now, unlike any other indigenous population on the planet that were viewed as savages, primitive people, blah, 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 we were viewed as nobodies. Have you heard of the people who said, like, Palestine is a land without people, for people without land? We're not viewed. We're not even, viewed as primitive people. We're nobodies. Now, there are a lot of problems with this term, but one of them I find very difficult to understand is that if you want to believe that Palestine was once a land without people, then you eliminate 10,000 years of a human history that have been evolving in the city of Jericho. You eliminate 6,000 years of a human history, continue the human history in the city of Hebron. You eliminate, besides eliminating, the people physically, you eliminate their indigenous culture, their indigenous wisdom, their roots, and so on. Why do supporters, defenders, and beneficiaries of Israeli criminal behavior insist that Palestinians don't exist? Is it because we don't? I'm very much aware of myself, I'm very much aware of my existence, and I'm sure nearly 15 million of us on this planet have the same awareness. But why? It actually makes sense. You cannot commit crime to people who don't exist. When you eliminate the people, the subjects of your crime, you eliminate the crime. So it's not because we don't exist, it's because a supporter, defender, and a beneficiary of Israeli criminal behavior can claim that the crime never took place, because there are no people to subject them to this criminal behavior. If you want to turn Palestine into a Jewish-only state, or as they say, Jewish homeland, land becomes important. Because you can't establish this state up in the air. We as Palestinian society, we are very diverse, we are very different, yet we have one thing in common. We belong to families that were robbed completely or partially of their inheritance, property, and land. The State of Israel passes laws to legalize this land theft. Of course, from the point of view of the perpetrator, it's the law. We confiscate the land, we appropriate the land, we reappropriate the land, and so on. But from the point of view of the victim, it's nothing short of robbery. The only one thing you find in common between all Palestinian people on the planet today is that we were all born to families that were robbed completely or partially of their land and property. And many people say, yeah, it's the law. If the law is racist, change it. The third thing, there's another thing that is added to Israeli civil laws, Israeli military laws, that legalize and normalize this process of land theft. It's God. And that's also confusing. The ideology that rules the Israeli regime is a secular ideology. There is no room for God there. But as an Israeli historian once put it, Zionists are people who do not believe in God, but nevertheless believe God gave them Palestine. The only reason we bring God to the picture is that we can't abuse His mighty to justify land theft. Did you hear that story before? Christianity was abused to justify genocide, land robbery, and so on. ISIS exploits Islamic faith to do the exact same thing. I escaped Palestine because for so long I allowed the priest in my school, people in my family, the soldier between my school and home to be representatives of faith. And I went to Sri Lanka because I was told it's a Buddhist place, only to find that Buddhist monks are the warmongers and the people who call for the genocides against Tamil, Hindu people in Sri Lanka. So every religion can be abused to justify criminal behavior.